He didn't look like a millionaire that morning. In fact, to most people in that busy terminal, he looked like just another tired businessman. Gray suit, travel bag slung over one shoulder, quiet eyes. His name was David Cole, founder and CEO of Cole Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the country. But nobody in that airport knew that, and David liked it that way. He believed in blending in letting actions, not appearances, speak. The morning air inside the terminal was thick with noise, coffee machines hissing, suitcase wheels rattling, airport announcements echoing from every direction. David approached the first-class check-in desk, holding his e-ticket and passport. The gold platinum priority tag on his boarding pass shimmered faintly. The woman behind the counter, a young employee named Megan, barely looked up. Her smile was automatic. Polite, practiced, "Good morning, sir." "Economy check-in is down that way." David blinked. Surprised, he gently slid his ticket toward her. "I believe this says first class." She took it, glanced at the name, and gave a tight little laugh. "Megan." "Oh, right. My mistake, Beat, although first-class upgrades were frozen last night. We've had issues with overbooking. You might want to check with economy boarding." Her tone was soft, but her eyes said something else, something David had felt too many times before. He smiled anyway. "No problem. I'll wait." As he stepped aside, a tall man in a navy blue suit, obviously a regular, rolled his suitcase up to the counter. "Mr. Peters." "Good to see you again." First class, of course. She scanned his ticket, printed a tag, and handed him a glass of champagne from the tray beside her. David watched quietly. It wasn't about envy. It was about recognition. He had paid for the same class, followed the same process, but received a fraction of the respect. What Megan didn't know was that the man she'd just brushed off had once been the reason her airline still had its fleet. 3 years earlier, Cole Dynamics analytics software had helped the same airline survive bankruptcy by predicting cost failures. Before they happened, David's signature was on the contract that saved their company. But at that moment, he didn't correct her. He didn't flash his credentials. He didn't need to prove himself. Not yet. As the line thinned, a manager in a blazer walked by. Megan leaned toward him, whispering something. The man frowned, then approached David. "Sir, I'm told you're waiting for a first-class seat." "Yes, that's right. I confirmed the upgrade last night. I'm afraid there's been a mix-up. Those seats are now reserved for premium members." "I see. And who makes that decision?" "Corporate policy, sir." "Nothing personal." But it was personal. It always was. The kind of dismissal that hides behind polite words. Policy, procedure, system error. Words that sound professional but mean. "You don't belong here." David nodded. He didn't argue. He simply walked away, scanning the glass walls of the terminal, where the airline's logo reflected in the morning light. Skylux Airlines, experience luxury without limits. A faint smile tugged at his lips. He sat quietly at gate 32, opening his laptop, emails, numbers, meetings, all waiting. But one message stood out at the top of his inbox. Flagged urgent, it was from his chief investment officer. Subject: acquisition clearance, Skylux Airlines, all signatures ready. You just need to authorize the final buyout. Estimated approval time, 12 minutes. David stared at the screen for a long moment. 12 minutes. That was how long it would take to finalize the purchase of the airline, the same one that had just refused him a first-class seat. He closed the laptop and exhaled. Slowly, he didn't plan on revenge. At least, not yet. What he wanted was understanding. So he waited. Sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones no one recognizes, and sometimes the quietest moments are the ones that change everything. As boarding began, passengers filed toward the gate. David stood in line like everyone else, calm, patient. The manager from earlier glanced his way, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Maybe guilt, maybe pride. David simply nodded. "Thank you. I'll find my seat." He turned, walking down the jet bridge. But before stepping onto the plane, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and tapped Authorize Purchase. The confirmation email pinged instantly. Transaction complete. In 12 minutes. Skylux Airlines no longer belonged to its board. It belonged to him. David tucked the phone away and stepped onto the aircraft. Humble, silent, and utterly in control. The same employees who had dismissed him were now unknowingly serving the man who owned the company they worked for. But David wasn't done. He had one more lesson to teach, not out of anger, but out of principle. And when that lesson unfolded, the entire world would be watching. The terminal smelled faintly of roasted coffee and jet fuel, a mix David Cole had grown used to over the years. He walked toward Gate 43, boarding pass in hand, shoulders relaxed, expression calm. On the surface, he looked like any other traveler. Neat charcoal suit, weekend bag, phone tucked in his palm. What most people didn't see was the quiet confidence beneath that calm, the kind that comes from knowing you've already won a game. Before the referee even blows the whistle, he reached the counter and smiled politely at the gate attendant. "Good morning. I was told at check-in there might be an upgrade available for first class." The woman didn't look up immediately. She kept typing, her manicured nails clicking against the keyboard. Name? David Cole. Her eyes flicked to him for a brief second, then back to the screen. She murmured. "We're fully booked in first today." David glanced at the display behind her. "Available seats. 2. Fully booked?" He repeated gently. She shifted her posture. "Sir, those are for platinum members only." "I see." His voice stayed even, calm. "I believe I am one." Her brow furrowed slightly as she looked him up and down. "You're with platinum?" He gave a short, patient smile. "Yes, for the last 6 years." The attendant hesitated, clearly searching for an excuse that didn't sound like one. "There must be an error in the system," she said finally, tapping again. "You'll have to take your original seat. 18A. For a moment, David considered arguing, but what would be the point? People who saw you a certain way rarely changed their minds because of words. So he simply said, "Of course. Thank you," and stepped aside. He boarded quietly with Group 1, Priority Economy, as the announcement called it. The phrasing made him smile. He'd learned long ago that priority didn't always mean respect. As he moved down the aisle, conversation softened. The subtle pause, the glance, the whisper. He recognized all of it. None of it new. Seat 18A was by the window. He set down his bag and loosened his tie slightly. The plane filled quickly. Across the aisle, 2 men in pressed shirts and smug grins chatted about quarterly profits. When they noticed him, one leaned toward the other and whispered something that earned a short laugh. David ignored it. He powered on his laptop, the screen lighting his face with a faint glow. Numbers flickered, emails refreshed. One unread message from Marcus Lane, CFO. Acquisition papers signed. "Congratulations, boss. You now own 54% of Skylux Airlines." David read it twice, then leaned back. A soft exhale escaped his lips. Not quite relief. Not quite satisfaction. Across the aisle, the flight attendant appeared. The same woman from the counter, now dressed in navy blue. Her name tag read Megan. "Sir," she said curtly, "this overhead bin is reserved for premium passengers. You'll need to move your bag farther back." He looked up. "I boarded with Group 1. That's priority boarding, isn't it?" She smiled. "The kind that wasn't friendly." "Priority economy, sir. Different class." A voice from the next row spoke up. An elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes. "The bin's half empty, dear." "Let the man keep his bag where it is." Megan's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have to maintain order." David held up a hand. "It's fine," he said quietly. He stood, lifted his bag, and moved it 2 rows down. "There. Problem solved." "Thank you for your cooperation," Megan said, though her tone made the words sound more like victory than gratitude. The older woman shook her head. "Some people love rules more than kindness," she murmured. David smiled faintly. "And some people love proving others wrong," he replied softly. The plane took off. Clouds swallowed the horizon. Megan returned during drink service, a bright smile plastered across her face. "Water or juice, sir?" "Water's fine," he said. She poured it, setting the cup down just a bit too hard on his tray. "Please keep your laptop stowed during meal service," she added. "It's closed," he said. Her gaze dropped. and sure enough, the device was shut tight. A flash of embarrassment crossed her face before she turned sharply and walked away. The businessman across the aisle smirked. "Guess you made an impression." David didn't look at him. "Guess so." He took a sip of water, eyes drifting toward the clouds again. By the second hour, the air in the cabin had shifted. Something quiet had changed. Megan noticed it too, the way a few passengers glanced at David, whispering after scrolling through their phones. A teenage boy 2 rows up had posted a video to social media. They made this guy move his bag because he didn't look premium. Wild. It was already climbing toward 1,000 likes. Megan caught him recording again and frowned. "No filming passengers, please," the boy shrugged. "Too late. It's viral," David kept to himself. He didn't need to say anything. He'd built empires on silence, because silence made people reveal themselves. He checked his laptop again. Another message. From Skylux Holdings, Board of Directors. Please confirm your attendance for today's emergency operations meeting. He smiled faintly. Emergency, he thought. You have no idea. Outside the window, the sun broke through the clouds, painting the wing in gold. The flight was smooth now, but beneath that calm, turbulence was building. David closed his laptop, folded his hands, and waited. He wasn't the one on trial anymore. They were. The steady hum of the engines filled the silence. Cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber glow as the plane reached cruising altitude. The air was thick, not with turbulence, but with tension. Megan moved methodically down the aisle, checking seat belts, collecting trash, reciting routine lines she'd said 1,000 times before. But something about 18A made her uneasy. The man she'd dismissed at the counter, the one who didn't look premium enough, now sat there with an expression that wasn't arrogance, but something worse. Composure. He wasn't angry. He wasn't flustered. He was waiting. She caught herself glancing back at him as she passed, forcing a professional smile when their eyes met. David noticed. He noticed everything, the way her shoulders tensed whenever she walked near him, the way the businessmen ahead of him whispered like middle schoolers gossiping, the way the elderly woman across the aisle occasionally gave him a sympathetic look, like she'd seen this kind of quiet humiliation before. He took another sip of his water and set the cup down gently. His phone buzzed once, a message notification from his assistant, Aria. Everything's finalized. News will break in about 15 minutes. Congrats, boss. 15 minutes. He turned the screen face down on the tray table. He didn't need congratulations. He just wanted to land this flight quietly, but sometimes fate enjoys spectacle. Mr. Cole? He looked up. Megan stood there again, this time with her clipboard tucked against her side. Yes? Can I see your boarding pass for a moment? He blinked once. You've seen it. I just need to verify something, she said, voice tight. There was a discrepancy in your seat assignment. He slid it toward her. She inspected it, frowning as if the print itself was suspicious. 18A, she read aloud. You weren't assigned a complimentary drink service at this level. You'll need to pay for refills. He tilted his head slightly. It's water. I'm aware. A few passengers turned their heads. The older woman sighed audibly. David's voice remained even. Charge me then, Megan hesitated. Never mind, she muttered, setting the paper down. It's fine. She turned to leave, but David's calm voice stopped her. Miss, he said quietly, if something about me makes you uncomfortable, I'd prefer you say it instead of pretending it's policy. The sentence landed like glass shattering in the quiet cabin. The businessman across the aisle froze mid-scroll. The teenage boy leaned in. Even the hum of the engines seemed to hush. Megan's mouth opened, then closed. I didn't mean... David raised a hand gently. It's all right. You're not the first. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. The boy 2 rows up whispered to his mom. That guy's calm, but scary calm. The mother nodded. That's the kind of calm that comes from knowing you're right. 10 minutes later, the captain's voice broke the silence. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've just received word from corporate that Skylux Holdings has completed a major internal transfer. Expect some minor operational delays on landing. David smiled faintly. The timing was poetic. Megan frowned, exchanging glances with another attendant. "Transfer?" she whispered. "What transfer?" The intercom clicked again. "Additionally, we're awaiting further instructions from headquarters regarding new management directives." "Please remain seated." David reached for his phone. It vibrated again. Another message from Aria. "Press release out." "You're trending." "Check the news." He unlocked it. The headline glowed on the screen. "David Cole acquires majority control of Skylux Airlines. Effective immediately." Megan saw the reflection of the headline in the window before he even lowered the phone. Her breath caught. You're... she stammered. He met her eyes. "Apparently your new boss." Her clipboard slipped slightly in her hand. I didn't know." "I'm sure you didn't," he said softly. "Most people never look long enough to." She swallowed hard. "Mr. Cole, he shook his head. "Don't apologize to me. Treat the next person better. That'll mean more than sorry ever could." The cabin erupted in murmurs. Phones buzzed as the passengers around them scrolled through breaking news alerts. The businessman who'd mocked him earlier turned pale. "Wait," he muttered, showing his phone to his companion. "This is him." "The same guy," the older woman smiled quietly. "Seems like the wrong person got the premium treatment today." The captain emerged from the cockpit a few minutes later, confusion written across his face. "Mr. Cole," he said, voice tentative. "Sir, we've just received confirmation. Congratulations on your new position," David nodded politely. "Thank you, Captain. I appreciate your professionalism." "Yes, of course, sir." "Would you like us to—" "No," David interrupted gently. "Finish the flight as planned. Everyone deserves to get where they're going." The captain smiled awkwardly and returned to the cockpit. As the plane began its descent, Megan approached one final time. She looked smaller now, stripped of her earlier confidence. "Mr. Cole," she said softly, "I've worked here 7 years. I really am sorry for how I treated you earlier." He studied her for a long moment. Then, with the faintest trace of kindness, he said, "Then make sure the next passenger doesn't need to own the airline to earn your respect." She nodded, eyes glassy. When the wheels touched down, the passengers broke into scattered applause, the kind that wasn't for a safe landing, but for poetic justice. David stood, retrieved his bag from the bin she'd made him move, and turned toward her with a final polite nod. "Take care, miss." And with that, he walked down the aisle, past rows of wide eyes and quiet admiration. Outside the terminal, cameras were already waiting. Flashbulbs burst as he stepped onto the jet bridge, unbothered. Behind him, the airline logo gleamed on the fuselage, his logo now, and somewhere deep inside that plane, a flight attendant realized she'd learned more about class in one flight than in 7 years of service. The terminal erupted the moment David Cole stepped through the jet bridge. Phone cameras flashed, voices overlapped, and somewhere behind the barrier of glass, a news anchor tried to shout a live report over the chaos. He hadn't planned a press moment. He hadn't called the media, yet the story had already flown faster than his plane. The man denied first class now owns the airline. He kept walking, measured, calm, jacket folded over his arm. His security detail trailed a few steps behind, but they weren't needed. The crowd parted on its own, curiosity holding everyone at a respectful distance. Outside, black sedans lined the curb. His assistant, Aria, waited beside the nearest one, phone pressed to her ear. She waved him over, mouthing, "They're all calling. Who's they this time?" he asked as the door closed behind him. "CNN, BBC, every financial desk in the country. Half the world thinks you grounded the flight on purpose." He smiled faintly. "If I wanted headlines, I'd have booked first class." Aria chuckled, then handed him a tablet. "You should still see this." The screen filled with clips, news anchors, social media montages, reaction videos. A teenager's TikTok titled, "When Karma Buys the Plane," already had 12 million views. Hashtags scrolled endlessly. Flight 18A, Skylux boss, real first class. David swiped through the noise, pausing on a frame of the flight attendant. Megan walking down the jet bridge after him, eyes red. The caption read, "She didn't know who he was." He sighed. They're turning her into the villain. "She made herself part of the story," Aria said carefully. "People love a contrast, arrogance versus humility." "It sells," he shook his head. I didn't buy this company to sell morals. I bought it to fix a culture. By the time the car reached the downtown office, the Skylux Tower already gleamed with fresh banners reading, "New Era of Excellence." Inside, executives buzzed through the lobby like stirred bees. Some avoided eye contact. Others plastered on quick smiles that vanished once he passed. He took the elevator to the top floor. The mirrored doors reflected a man who looked perfectly composed, tailored suit, still creased boarding pass tucked in his pocket like a reminder. When the doors opened, the boardroom stood waiting. 10 directors, one long table, and a view of the city stretching to the horizon. "Mr. Cole," the chairman began nervously, "congratulations on the acquisition. It's, quite the public debut." "Unplanned," David said, setting his briefcase down. "But maybe necessary." The room fell quiet. "I read every passenger complaint you've ignored for 5 years," he continued. "They weren't about broken seats or bad coffee. They were about attitude. The belief that some people matter less the moment they walk through our gate." One director cleared his throat. "With respect, sir, that's more of a training issue than a structural," David cut in softly. "Then we'll restructure the training." Another tried to lighten the tension. "The PR value of this incident is, frankly, golden." "Sympathy sells tickets." David's expression didn't change. "I don't want sympathy. I want standard. Every seat, every passenger, same dignity. That's how we win trust. And profit follows." No one argued after that. Hours later, when the meeting dispersed, Arya stepped into his office with 2 coffees. "You're trending in 23 countries," she said. "People are calling it the Flight 18A revolution." He accepted the cup, amused. "Revolution's a heavy word for a flight delay." "Maybe," she said. "But you made people see what class really looks like." He walked to the window, watching planes rise from the distant runway, each one a small promise that things could be better. "Find Megan," he said finally. "The attendant from my flight. I want her transferred to customer relations training at headquarters. If she learns she can lead," Arya blinked. "You're giving her a promotion?" "I'm giving her a chance," he corrected. "The same thing everyone deserves." That night, the city outside shimmered with rain. David sat in his penthouse office, the glow of the skyline washing across the glass. On his desk lay the crumpled boarding pass, proof of where humility ends and ownership begins. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but answered out of instinct. "Mr. Cole?" The voice was hesitant. "This is Megan. I just wanted to thank you for not ending my career today." He leaned back in his chair. "You didn't owe me an apology, Miss Megan. You owed yourself one." "I've been reading the comments," she said quietly. "People hate me. They don't even know me." "They don't know me either," he said. "They know a headline. You'll survive it. Just make sure you learn from it." "I will," she promised. "For what it's worth. You taught me more about respect in 2 hours than this company did in 7 years." There was a pause, soft and genuine. "Then we're both learning," he said. "Good night, Megan." He ended the call, turned off the lights, and looked out at the rain once more. Somewhere out there, another flight was boarding, another story beginning. But this time, maybe, just maybe, the lesson from seat 18A would fly a little further. By morning, the world had turned Skylux Airlines into a symbol. What began as a single misunderstanding had become a mirror for millions, every traveler who'd ever been overlooked, judged, or dismissed. News anchors debated whether David Cole's move was genius leadership or corporate theater. Commentators dissected his every sentence, calling him the billionaire with a passenger's heart. Even late-night hosts joined in. One quipped, "He didn't buy a first-class seat, he bought the whole plane." The audience roared, but behind the laughter, something deeper stirred. The airline's inbox overflowed with stories from ordinary people. The nurse who'd been denied boarding because her ticket was budget. The father forced to miss his daughter's recital when a clerk refused to rebook him. Each message ended the same way. "Thank you for proving we deserve respect, too." In the Skylux media room, screens displayed live metrics, views, mentions, market shifts. The airline stock, once stagnant, surged 12% overnight. The marketing director practically vibrated with excitement. "Mr. Cole, this is a phenomenon. The world loves you. We can rebrand instantly, launch a new campaign. Everyone flies first. I can have it trending in 6 hours. David watched the data scroll, silent. Then he said, "We're not chasing likes. We're chasing loyalty." The room went quiet again. "I want a plan," he continued, "to rebuild from the inside out. Every employee, from the pilots to the janitors, will take the new empathy and leadership course. No exceptions." The director hesitated. "Sir, that'll cost millions." "So did arrogance," David replied. "And look what that bought you." Outside the building, a sea of reporters gathered. Cameras swung up as he stepped to the podium, flanked by Arya. He didn't need notes. Every word had already formed in his mind on that flight, between humiliation and grace. "Good morning," he began. "Yesterday I was a passenger on Flight 18A. I was reminded how power means nothing when respect is missing." Flashbulbs exploded. "I didn't buy Skylux to prove a point," he said. "I bought it to fix one. This company forgot that every seat carries a story. From today, that changes." Murmurs rippled across the crowd. "We'll begin with a complete cultural rebuild," he said. "And for those asking, yes, every employee who's ever been disciplined for attitude will be reviewed." Many of them were reacting to a broken system, not causing it. Someone shouted, "What about the flight attendant?" David looked straight into the cameras. "She's part of the rebuild. She'll be helping lead our new customer relations program." A collective gasp rose. Arya's lips twitched into a subtle smile. The reporters leaned forward, scribbling furiously. That night, the internet exploded again, this time with admiration. Commenters who had once demanded Meghan's firing now called it the most graceful comeback of the year. Videos of David's speech racked up millions of views. Edits paired his words with orchestral music, captions reading, "Humility is the new luxury." Inside her small apartment, Meghan watched the clip on her cracked phone screen. She couldn't stop crying, not from shame this time, but from gratitude. Her mother called moments later. "Baby, you're on TV." "I know, Mom," she whispered. I think he believes in me." Meanwhile, in a corner office across town, Skylux's former CEO, Richard Halden, stared at the same broadcast. His jaw tightened. The company he'd built, the one that had ignored him after the sale, was now worshipping a man who'd once been a passenger. He turned the TV off and muttered, "Let's see how long the saint routine lasts." He picked up his phone. "Get me the board's legal team," he told his assistant. "If Cole thinks he owns this place without opposition, he's wrong." Back at Skylux headquarters, David sat alone, reviewing files. Each folder told a story, years of quiet neglect, of complaints buried under bureaucracy. Arya entered, holding a folder. "You asked for the staff reports on customer dismissals." He flipped through the list, name after name. Some were gone, some still hanging on by a thread. His eyes stopped at one file, an old maintenance worker named Paul Hendricks, written beside his name, "Terminated, insubordination." What was his offense? David asked. Arya checked. "He refused to clean a first-class cabin after a passenger insulted him." He set the folder down. "Find him, offer him his job back, and give him a raise," Arya smiled. "You're rewriting everything, aren't you?" "Not rewriting," he said quietly. "Just correcting the flight path." That night, David looked out his office window again. The skyline glittered like distant constellations. Somewhere below, he could still hear the faint hum of the airport. Planes landing, taking off, connecting people who might never know his name, but would feel his decision in every smile, every seat, every flight. He whispered to himself, "We're airborne now." And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to breathe, not as a passenger, not as a CEO, but as a man who had finally arrived where respect takes off. The morning after David Cole's historic announcement, Skylux headquarters buzzed like a live wire. Phones rang endlessly, emails multiplied by the minute, and every news outlet seemed glued to the company's every move. On the surface it looked like victory, but in the shadows, the storm was already forming. Richard Halden, former CEO, watched the live feed from his private office. The corners of his mouth curled into a slow, deliberate smile. "They think this is the end," he muttered to no one in particular. "They have no idea what comes next." He leaned back, reviewing the board's internal communications. He already had allies inside Skylux, mid-level executives who resented David's sudden control, employees loyal to the old regime, and a PR team eager to regain relevance. Every one of them would be a pawn. By noon, the first wave hit. Anonymous tips were sent to news outlets highlighting irregularities in David's purchase of Skylux. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire passenger buys airline, conflict of interest." Was Flight 18A a PR stunt? Skylux employees voiced concern over dictatorial CEO social media exploded. Clips of David's speech were clipped, re-edited, and paired with captions like "privileged billionaire playing hero" and "the airline billionaire who thinks he can fix everything." Inside the headquarters, David remained focused, reviewing the first reports from HR and compliance. Aria, his COO, entered, her expression tense. "David, the media narrative is shifting fast. They're framing this as arrogance, not justice," she said. He didn't look up. "Then we control the story. Every employee, every passenger testimony, every internal case study, push it live. Show the evidence." Aria hesitated. "But the leaks, they're coming from inside. Someone's feeding them directly to the press." David finally looked up. His eyes hardened. "Find them," and quietly. No dramatics. Meanwhile, in the corporate wing, the betrayal unfolded. Michael Trent, head of employee relations, slid into a secluded conference room with a reporter from a major network. "Everything you've heard is true," he said, smirking. "But the part they're not telling you is how reckless Cole is. He's overruling procedures, ignoring safety, and alienating staff. Employees are terrified." The reporter's eyes widened. "Do you have proof?" Michael held up emails, carefully cherry-picked documents and screenshots, all painted to suggest chaos under David's leadership. "It's all here, and the public deserves to know." Outside, a junior PR associate witnessed the exchange. Her stomach dropped. "Michael." "He can't do this," she whispered. But by then, the story was already circulating. By evening, the narrative had shifted completely. The hashtag #Skylux disaster trended worldwide. Former passengers flooded social media, claiming mistreatment, biased upgrades, and staff intimidation. The stories weren't verified, but perception was reality, and reality didn't matter. David's phone vibrated relentlessly. Calls from advisors, reporters, and analysts poured in. "Sir, the stock has dropped 15% in the last 4 hours, Aria said, her voice tight. "Shareholders are panicking. The board is requesting an emergency meeting." David's jaw tightened. "Then we meet them head on. Facts first. Emotion second." The boardroom felt colder than ever. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, city lights blinked like distant warnings. The Skylux board, some loyal to David and others still loyal to Holden, sat in tense silence. Richard Holden, invited under the guise of consultation, made his move. He opened his laptop, casting a spreadsheet to the room. "Look here," he said, voice smooth. "These numbers show operational risks under Cole's empathy-first policies. Flights delayed, complaints rising, staff confusion. You want stability or you want a social media stunt?" A murmur ran through the board. Some nodded subtly. Others, loyal to David, bristled. David leaned forward. "Every number here is out of context. Complaints? Minor issues handled, delays. Temporary adjustments during training. We are transforming an entire corporate culture. This isn't chaos. It's evolution," Holden smiled thinly. "Evolution or PR theater. The public will decide, not you." By midnight, the final act of betrayal was set. Megan Silva, head of customer relations, the same employee David had reinstated after the Flight 18A incident, entered his office. She looked exhausted, guilt etched across her face. "David, she began. He turned, sensing the weight of her words. "I've been feeding Holden information," she confessed. "I thought I was protecting Skylux. I didn't want your idealism to destroy people's careers. I thought I was helping." David's eyes widened in disbelief. "You betrayed us." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I didn't know how else to stop the chaos. He promised stability. I'm sorry." David's hands tightened into fists. "Everything we've built, undone by fear and loyalty to the wrong man." The social media storm had reached a fever pitch. Clips of Megan confessing and emails leaking painted David as reckless. News anchors interrupted programming. "Skylux CEO under fire. Shareholders demand accountability. Alleged insider betrayal rocks airline industry. Even employees loyal to David began questioning the future. Some whispered in hallways, "Can he really save this?" Then came the call from the emergency board meeting. David answered. The voice on the other end was cold, professional, and cutting. "Mr. Cole, the board has voted. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending an external investigation into Flight 18A and corporate conduct. Security will escort you from the premises if necessary." David felt the world tilt beneath him. Every carefully planned step, every triumph, every act of courage, it felt like it had crumbled in an instant. Arya, standing behind him, whispered, "They can't do this." "You're still the owner." David exhaled slowly, the weight settling in. "Not enough. Not yet." Outside, paparazzi and news vans swarmed Skylux headquarters. Crowds chanted, waved signs, and live-streamed every movement. David stepped onto the lobby floor, surrounded by security, cameras flashing like a storm. His once commanding presence now felt fragile against the tidal wave of media, corporate politics, and betrayal. He looked at Megan, at Arya, at the board members who had whispered doubts and votes behind closed doors. Then his phone buzzed. A single text, "Flight 18A isn't over. Check the uploads." He opened the message. Video clips, hundreds of them, were live on the internet. Clips showing manipulated edits of Flight 18A, Michael Trent's leaks, and social media posts framing him as a villain. David's stomach dropped. He realized in that instant, the battle wasn't just against Halden. It was against the entire perception of him. And the worst part? There was no immediate way to fight back. Every decision, every reaction, would be scrutinized, misinterpreted, and weaponized. He stepped into the elevator, the weight of the world pressing down. Arya followed silently. David's mind raced. If Flight 18A taught me anything, it's that power means nothing without control over the narrative. And right now, I have none. The doors closed. The cameras outside captured every step. Tweets, likes, and shares erupted instantly. The final notification pinged. Halden's PR team just released the internal audio. They're calling it CEO mismanagement at Skylux. David stared at the screen, and then the cliff hit. David Cole, billionaire passenger turned CEO, suspended. Legal action pending. Flight 18A fallout continues. The camera pans out. The lobby swarms with journalists. The city lights blur. David's hands shake slightly, but his jaw tightens. He knows this isn't the end. But for now, it is a disaster. The morning air over Skylux headquarters felt heavier than usual, thick with tension and lingering outrage. David Cole walked through the main doors, head held high despite the swirling media storm outside. Cameras flashed relentlessly, journalists shouting questions, shareholders demanding answers, and employees whispering accusations. Arya trailed behind, clutching a tablet loaded with real-time social media analytics. "David, it's worse than last night," she said. "Every network, every platform, Halden's narrative is dominating." "Your suspension is trending globally." David didn't flinch. He had anticipated this moment. Every defeat, every betrayal, every viral clip had been part of the setup. He simply needed the leverage, the evidence, and the patience to turn the tide. The first move was swift. He convened an emergency meeting with loyal executives and key employees in the Skylux crisis room. Screens lined the walls, displaying social feeds, news channels, and live analytics. "We're not reacting," David said, voice steady, commanding attention. "We're controlling. Every post, every interview, every leak will be countered with verified evidence. Halden's lies will be exposed, and the truth will reach our passengers first." Arya nodded. "I've already compiled a timeline of Flight 18A. Everything from boarding to the moment he tried to manipulate the board." David smiled faintly. "Good. Then we start broadcasting it. Live." By noon, Skylux launched a controlled counter-narrative. Employees recorded first-hand accounts, flight attendants sharing their perspectives, passengers defending David's decisions, and legal experts explaining the precise legality of every action he had taken during Flight 18A. On social media, hashtags like EO Flight 18A Truth and EO CEO Justice began to climb. overtaking Halden's fabricated trending topics. News anchors, forced to acknowledge the evidence, reluctantly updated their segments. New evidence emerges in Skyluck's CEO controversy. Alleged mismanagement claims under review. Former executives accused of misinformation. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, David prepared his most daring move. He needed Halden exposed, not just in headlines, but publicly, incontrovertibly, in a way that could never be misrepresented. By late afternoon, a Skyluck's press conference was scheduled. David entered the grand auditorium, facing hundreds of reporters and the cameras of every major network. Behind him, large screens displayed side-by-side comparisons of Flight 18A footage, edited clips Halden had leaked versus the uncut raw footage. He stepped up to the podium, taking a deep breath. Good afternoon. Yesterday, my name became a symbol of outrage, misinformation, and bias. Today, I am here to set the record straight. Flight 18A was not a PR stunt, and I did not violate company protocols. What you've seen circulating online has been manipulated by individuals attempting to undermine the truth. Gasps rippled through the room as he played side-by-side footage. Reporters whispered, eyes widening. Halden's carefully curated narrative began to crumble in real time. Outside, social media erupted. Screens captured expressions of disbelief and shock. David Cole wasn't reckless. He was betrayed. Former exec exposed. Halden's conspiracy unravels live. Skyluck CEO fights back. Truth triumphs. Meanwhile, inside, Arya handed David a tablet. A live feed from multiple employees showed Halden scrambling, sending frantic emails, deleting posts, and trying to explain away the undeniable proof of his manipulation. David watched calmly. "Let him fight ghosts," he murmured. The final, devastating blow came when David revealed the internal audit. Charts displayed the anomalies in employee communications. Email trails directly linking Halden to the leaks and edits. "Ladies and gentlemen," David said, voice firm, echoing through the auditorium. "These are the facts. Internal communications proved deliberate misinformation. Employees were coerced. Passengers were used. And the individual behind this orchestrated chaos for personal gain is sitting quietly. Nowhere near the truth." A collective gasp rose as Halden's name appeared on the screen, exposed for the first time in front of millions. Journalists scrambled, calling their networks. Social media erupted into a frenzy. Halden exposed trended globally within minutes. But David didn't stop there. He pivoted to Skyluck's employees. Flight 18A taught us a critical lesson. Bias, fear, and misinformation can spread faster than truth. From this moment forward, Skyluck will implement comprehensive transparency protocols, mandatory bias training, and real-time reporting systems for employee and passenger concerns. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "And for anyone who doubted me, yesterday was a test. Today is proof that integrity, courage, and preparation can overcome even the most calculated betrayal." By evening, the tide had fully turned. Stock prices surged. Shareholders expressed renewed confidence. Employees rallied behind David. Social media sentiment flipped. Skyluck CEO redeems himself. Lesson in courage and leadership. Flight 18A, from viral scandal to corporate triumph. Even those who had doubted him, including Megan Silver, approached quietly. "I'm sorry," Megan said, voice trembling. "I thought I was helping Skyluck. I didn't realize the bigger picture." David placed a hand on her shoulder. "You acted from fear. Now act from truth. Help us make this company stronger." As night fell over the city, David returned to his office. The skyline glittered, a reflection of the battles fought and won. He opened a folder labeled Redemption Protocol, Phase 2. Inside were plans to expand transparency, community engagement, and corporate accountability. He glanced at Arya, who had been his steadfast ally through the storm. "Are we ready?" she asked. David smiled, eyes sharp. "Not just ready. We're unstoppable." Flight 18A was the beginning, and now we change the future. A single notification pinged on his phone. A message from a passenger on Flight 18A. "Thank you, Mr. Cole. You turned fear into courage. You turned injustice into change." David leaned back, letting the words sink in. The path ahead was long, but for the first time, he knew victory wasn't just about wealth or power. It was about integrity, justice, and leaving a legacy that truly mattered.